process currently. And so
he just committed out of his budget.
well, that's right. And Mel's here, and she's raising her hand. So she's probably the department that should come through.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, no.
No.
All right, thank you. Then see what you committed to.
So the Family Resource Centers are an important part of our One Stop. A One Stop is a partnership, and they are doing very well, and they are critical hubs to the communities they're in the outlying areas. And they make it so much easier for us to deliver services out there. But what they need is the ability to have more staff to do Family Resource Center activities. And so the board is presently supporting each of them at the rate of $10,000 a year in general fund. And I think what they're asking for is additional general fund, because general fund money can be a little more discretionary than my funding can be. I've got, the state has, no, you can only do this with this, you can do this with this, but not that. So they are hoping to get a little more support from the board so they can continue to increase their family resource activities. And sort of along that same line, we've been talking with within Health and Social Services and within Behavioral Health Department in particular and with the state about whether we could use at least a small portion of Mental Health Services Act funding to also kick in just some sort of discretionary funding. The state has a real heartburn when we start talking discretionary funding, but I just think that the presence of the Family Resource Centers are just critical to those communities, and they're critical for our ability to deliver services and identify people in those communities who need our services. So I'd just like to lend my support to their plea.
I think the advice I would give you is to send a letter to the Budget Committee, which I am the chairman of this year, and asking, you know, what you had here from both of you, let's do that. And address that to the Budget Committee, and the Budget Committee will be probably making the recommendation to or not to, whatever it be or how much.
Well, it'll be up to the Budget Committee to try to isolate and find where best that the funds could come from, because it's everybody's in agreement. Yeah, it would be nice to do.
Right.
Irrespective, we have to locate the dollars and which fund it would come from, whether it's...
Except we'll put that burden on Mr. Egan to find out where the money comes from.
Janice, it's not lost upon us about what you guys do in our county.
Yeah.
There's full support from the board. So,
Me and Tom both strongly, you know, support you in our district, and we can twist arms up here.
I kind of have a couple questions for you.
Go ahead, Tom. Didn't get here.
Oh, go ahead.
You get it.
Monthly bills. What kind of monthly bills do you take out of your fund for out there?
For our funding.
Yeah.
The monthly bills would be the utilities, you know, the share of cost of utilities, the share of cost of rent of the facility.
And how much is the rent of the facility?
$933.
And where does that go, Richard?
I'm sorry, you're
I
talking
can
about
speak
the board
to that.
stages.
Yes, go see it.
Go ahead.
It goes to Health and Social Services, and that sounds like a lot for a building that, you know, supposedly is free. It's not free. We pay $87, and then the $933 is a fully loaded cost. So it includes their share of internet connectivity,
Okay.
copiers, all that stuff. And, you know, we try to keep those costs down, but it's a huge building.
Yeah, the actual
But
rent
even
is
Westwood pays
$1
those
a month.
costs. And
Yeah,
it's,
the rent we know is $1 a month, but I was wondering where the rest of that $933 came from.
we can give you a breakdown on that.
Yeah, could you do that for me, please?
Yeah, make a copy of that and address it to Tom and the Budget Committee too.
Yeah, that's fine. And this question's for Eric. You know, I asked you about this before, but is there any way we can make that a disaster center for FEMA or something to help support that facility?
In regards to like an evacuation center or something
Yes.
like that? We'll have to go through an assessment and evaluate the center and see what kind of amenities it has in regards to that type of scenario. And we're working on that as far as assessing different centers in the county as we speak.
And I'm sure Westwood could utilize that, and so could you guys. But I know when we had that windstorm, they were using the mark as an evacuation center, and I'm talking like putting emergency generators in, and if we could get some kind of grants for that kind of stuff to help stabilize that
There's grants for that. They become very difficult to explain how
Okay.
you weed through the weeds in that.
Okay.
It's free money, but nothing's free.
No, I get that, I get that, but I mean,
Aaron had a question, then Jim.
Yeah, in your little flyer here, you have the food pantry. You see you currently have 347 families signed up for food pantry. I was just curious on where do all those families come from? I mean, for what, how big of a...
The majority come from Herlong and Doyle. We have families from Wendell, we have families from Milford, we have some that come from Susanville, we have 3 from Janesville, and we have some that come from Reno, which is across the border. They live out in the desert. So they're technically Reno, but they're closest to us. We don't turn anyone away, so we pretty much accept people from where they come from. And then we communicate with other food suppliers in the area to make sure that we're not dealing with people that are, double dipping or trying to get all their free food from everywhere that they can. So we work very closely with Crossroads and Salvation Army to communicate with us that we're not dealing with the people that, because there are some that like to go here and then go here and then go here, and instead of going to the grocery store. So.
And that was kind of my next question. I mean, what qualifications they would have to be available to use those services?
That we ask them to fill out a form, an intake form, where they let us know where they fall in the income guidelines. And it's something that we are requested by Lassen County Action Agency, who funds our pantry. And so we follow their guidelines to qualify for. We don't turn anyone away because even those that have jobs come on hard times. There's the month where it's just tough or whatever. So we don't generally turn anyone away. That's our biggest thing, is that, just because you have a job doesn't mean you don't need assistance in getting your food.
Do you do any verification on those?
Yes.
Double check their where they live or
Yes.
their jobs?
Yes.
So you will turn them away if they don't meet the criteria, or you?
No, we do not turn anyone away. That is the biggest thing that we stand by, is that we won't turn anyone away. I mean, we don't give an astronomical amount of food. We give enough to get by for 3 or 4 days, until you're able to make it to the grocery store. So we're not giving an astronomical amount of food. But we're not going to turn anyone away just because they have a job and their income might be above that. The income level is so low already that anyone that has a job has a bad day, has a bad week or a bad month where they need food for their family. So just having a job doesn't mean you don't qualify.
Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to say that I fully support the concept of these resource centers, family resource centers in the county. And I think being on the board at the time when it was first initially established itself as a supporter and maintain support even now. How we do that, though, I think we have to be prudent and smart. And I think that your group has done an awesome job of trying to manage and how to do that. I know the parent group that May chairs the board on works really hard to leverage all the various resources. And I'd have to say that from all the tours that we've taken, and we've had a chance to tour all these facilities a couple times in recent years, I was just totally amazed the first time, and continue to be amazed even in the follow-up visit with the functioning of your food pantry. You've got one of the best setups I think anybody's got here. Even the food banks here in town, I think, would be envious with what you have set up and how you kind of function there. So I think that's something you should be proud of, and how we as a county can find the funding and direct the funding in that direction. I think it's a win-win for all of us, and I just appreciate the fact that you guys are there trying to do the job. And Whisper's not left out, and I think Desiree, I'm glad she's here. The one issue I know in recent visits and stuff we talked about is getting some renovation work done in the restroom facilities at your facility.
Yeah.
Has that ever been? I have never heard back. I don't think the board's ever gotten any feedback as to whether or not that was accomplished. I know there was at one time funding put in there to try to target and do that, but I think it was kind of somewhat of a Band-Aid. And I think the other thing is that when it comes to facilities, that not only do we provide access to facilities and to funding for programs, but I think we have to make sure those facilities are functioning at a good level. And I think the Westwood facility is probably the most challenged in terms of at least that part. I know from our tour over there, I was kind of like surprised at how bad off it was. I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, that you've been kind of following. I haven't heard back if we ever got that fully accomplished.
We had some restroom issues a few years ago that did get resolved.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's what you're speaking to.
That's kind of what I'm speaking to. I just, I guess not hearing a whole lot tells me
Yeah,
maybe it was, but whether it's a Band-Aid and it's just
It
barely
took a little
working.
while, but it got
Good.
resolved.
The other thing on speaking of the facilities, I know that the board, when it comes to the decisions that were going to be voted on before, and I wasn't in support of, and still probably not in support of based on the terms, but I'd like to see that if the county does wind up gaining the deed to and title to the building that the One Stop uses in Hurlong, that we go one step further once that's achieved, and that is to, I'd say deed the facility over to the One Stop people so they have control of their own building. But realizing they don't have the resources to maintain and upkeep the building probably is not a feasible item. So the county, in order to put in any resources it has to do that. But I think the next best solution would be is that we put claim deed maybe 49% interest in the building to the One Stop. And the reason for that is in the future, if another mistake is made and somebody was to all of a sudden inappropriately or ill-gotten get this building, they'd have to at least get those people to sign off for it first. And had that been in place in the first place, it would have protected them from what happened here in the last year or two. And that doesn't really cost us anything to do, but it gives them, I think, credibility and respect for what they're doing. And it would give them a minority interest in the building so they're not having to bear the brunt, but at the same time, they have a little bit of peace of mind in terms of protection. So I think that's something that the board should consider when they enter into those other transactions. I'd like to see us at least give them that option to be able to do that, because that way you can't give the building away in the future.
Okay, any more questions? You guys have more?
I have one more comment. If and when we decide to go on a tour of the Army Depot, I highly suggest that we go through Janice's building. You guys will be shocked at the job she does. Janice is a shining star in our community. I think you really are. And I appreciate everything you do, and I'm sure Desiree does the same thing for Westwood. And I wouldn't mind.
All right.
Up to look at that facility also with Bob one of these days.
I do have to add that we would be nothing without the volunteers in my community.
Oh, yeah.
If I didn't have the volunteers, there's no way we would service 347 families in a food pantry or the thrift store or the upcoming education center. It would never happen. So we are very, very lucky to have the members in our community that help and volunteer.
Having been there on a Thanksgiving dinner night, it was shocking, the job you guys did. I was thoroughly impressed, yeah. And thank you for your effort.
Thank you. And on a personal note, on the record, I would like to mention that as a member of the Hurlong community, we are very supportive of Mr. Hammond and the job that he does and the changes that are developing. And as those of us that live in the community, we are very appreciative and thankful for the changes that are coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree, for what you did. All right, we'll move on to our 10-10, I'm certain, Big Valley Family Resource Center.
Morning. Lillian Arnold with the Big Valley Community Alliance. And I wanted to thank Supervisor Hammond for letting me piggyback with the other family resource centers. I'm really have to say, though, that I'm a little frustrated that we have to be here because I came and saw you all last August to talk about the concerns that we had about the funding that was available for facilities through MHSA that had not been used yet. And you gave staff a month to come back with an actual plan. And instead, staff came back with a plan that would pretty much close the one-stops and leave the family resource centers back to where we began, basically in 2003. And now it's 2015. And it seems a sad situation to put all of this money and energy into family resource centers and one-stops that are then going to be where the services are going to come back into Susanville rather than being available to communities and residents in the outlying areas. I say that because I actually had staff tell me that if it was up to them, the one-stops would be closed. So this is a concern for me, and obviously and a concern for our community. We provide a lot of services, but systematically our services are being changed by the staff at Lassen County Health and Social Services. We've actually gone from a caseload of behavioral health clients of over 30 to now we have approximately 17 because their cases are being closed or they're being sent to Susanville, transported to Susanville on a weekly basis to be seen by therapists. We no longer have a therapist in our community. We've had 5 therapists in the past so many years, so that makes it difficult anyway for someone with a mental health issue to, again, tell their story. How many times do you want to tell someone you've been raped, or how many times do you want to tell someone you held a baby while they died? That's very frustrating. Our last therapist was terminated in January, and since then we've only had a therapist come to our valley once a month just to do treatment plans and often to close cases rather than keep them going. So since there are no services being had, our clients are going elsewhere, which means that the county doesn't get their funding, so we have less funding. That's an important issue, the fact that slowly but surely services in our outlying areas are being cut by, for one reason or another. And I talk to staff at Health and Social Services about it, and they always tell me, it's not that easy, Lillian, or, things are changing. Well, of course things are changing, but over the years, consistently, we have served between 600 and 800 local residents a month at the Family Resource Center, and we only have 2 part-time staff there. We can't afford to have a full-time staff. So we work out of a Lassen County Business Park building, and quite honestly, the Lassen County Buildings Director came up to the center one time and asked me who I rented the building from, and I said I rent it from you, because he didn't know about the building part. So I got to give him a little information, because that's where we pay $400 a month for our building, and our building works. It's in a perfect spot right on the highway, right in Beaver, so it works great. I know there's been talk about moving it to Ayden, which is a pity because Ayden is in Modoc County and 12 miles away from Beaver. So I agree that we need more funding, or at least to maintain our funding. This is the problem. We go along for a few years and everything's great, and the county just continues our contract, and then all of a sudden we hear that we're going to be cut hugely. And how do you maintain services at $25,000 or $35,000? We tried that quite a few years ago. Some of you may remember when our funding went from $75,000 to $25,000, and it just didn't work. We have tried to get, we've written proposals and tried to get funding from a wide variety of foundations. The S.H. Cowell Foundation, which is specifically uses its funding for family resource centers in Northern California, says that we're too remote and will not fund us. We've tried California Wellness, California Endowment, even the Lassen Plumas Sierra Community Action Agency, who funded us for 3 years, did not continue to fund us. They said that they were putting all their funding into senior services. although we serve the elderly, but that is not the goal of Lassen Sierra Plumas Community Action Agency. Their goal is to take people out of poverty, which is what we were working on with our classes for budgeting, computer sciences, having the Beaver Library open so that people can come in and do research and learn how to run a business. So it's been frustrating. I have to say that to you all. I in no way think that our community would do well or would be healthier without our one-stop. And I think that's the main line. The bottom line is, would our communities be healthier without us? And I strongly say no. So if I'm willing to send a letter asking for more funding, but I also think that there's a real concern about staff at Health and Social Services trying to either limit or remove the one-stops that are in our communities. So with that, thank you, and if you have any questions.
I got a question.
Sure.
I know that it was talked about with the upgrade to the building, it was going to be cost prohibitive for the county to do it. And so we come up with the alternative to potentially move to 80. And as to my understanding, it doesn't matter if it's in Modoc County or Lassen County, it still serves the community, and the funding can still be reimbursed from the state if the Lassen County goes to Modoc County to receive those services.
I don't know.
And so, I mean, Big Valley is Big Valley, even though the border does go through it. It's just like with the groundwater thing. It doesn't matter about county lines. Big Valley is intermediate priority basin. It does not matter. It's still one community, one basin, one area. And it's the same way whether one stops in Aiden or Beaver. It doesn't matter, in my humble opinion. And you know, to kind of go back to you and you guys are the ones that don't want to move. It's the
not,
staff
it's the
right here.
community.
Well, I disagree with that.
Well, I don't.
Personally. And
Really?
that's my humble opinion as far as that goes.
I guess I could do a
And as far as
sign-in about it and ask people what their choice was. But I know that at the last stakeholder meeting, Supervisor Elbach, the majority of people there said, I don't think I heard anybody say they wanted to move to 8, and actually.
Okay, well, I mean, the building is there, the facilities are there that you guys need, you know, for the confidentiality, for your storage, for your space. All that is there for a reasonable rate, and I mean, I think it could be that way. And then as far as the therapist goes, there was a therapist who worked for the county. I think it was just this last meeting we give her a proclamation on her retirement, and she has since opened her own private wellness center in Aiden.
Right.
And so I don't know if that's taken away from your caseload or not. I don't know. I'm not privy.
Well, that was Ana Luisa Orozco. She only worked for the county for maybe 3 years, I believe. I'm not sure how it worked out that she got a retirement, but that's, you know, beside the point. But since Ana Luisa, she was one of our therapists, yes. We had some before her and quite a few after.
And I don't know if she's direct competition. You guys are not, I mean, as far as that goes.
I hope not. I hope we work as a partner.
Yeah, you know, more diversity. And, you know, going back to the original plans as far as the money in the buildings, I mean, I'll refer back to Melody on this, is kind of where we are, where do you be, or the other, what do you guys come up with as far as that funding you have to rehabilitate or improve the different ones?
So our plan for this coming fiscal year, we kept running into problems. We had a handyman to do repairs, and he wasn't licensed, so we could no longer contract with him. The prevailing wage issue drove the cost of doing the remodel we had hoped to do to Big Valley way out of budget. So there's about $650,000 left. All the one-stop buildings need work. And so our plan is to just kind of divide that up evenly, up to $200 roughly for each one. Pete Heimbigner from Public Works is helping me. He has a architect who is willing and able to do the engineering plans we need so that we can move forward. We've also worked with Public Works to get, we're hoping to get an additional senior buildings and ground worker for 15-16. so that the public works staff can take on these repairs that need to be done for the most part, so that we can get them done without having to do the prevailing wage issue. And we'd really like to fix them all up. They all have issues. None of them are, the restrooms are not fully ADA compliant. Westwood needs office space. Furlong needs ramps. And certainly Beaver could use some refreshing, and their restroom is not big enough either, and we'd like to fix that with the back office so that it's an office. There's some equipment in it that could be taken out. So that's our plan for 15-16. We're looking at putting about half of that $600,000 in there to get those projects started and identified and then begin working on them.
And how about the portable, I know that talked about one time.
Well, as Lillian said, we've looked at the case numbers out in the one-stops, and you know, when we first started out there as one-stops, we had staff on hand. We did a lot of outreach engagement and started bringing people in. Well, in the meantime, the Affordable Care Act happened, and parity is being enforced now. So that was the rule that said that insurance companies had to pay the same benefits for mental health services as they pay for other physical ailments, and also for substance use disorder services, which we're still behind on that one. Well, we're not. The enforcement of the Affordable Care Act on that is a little behind. And so we looked at the numbers, and we don't have the staff out in those, we don't have the numbers out in those communities to justify full-time staff, but we continue to send case managers out, we send therapists out, and then the people who have severe needs, we're bringing them in. We're also working on an innovation plan that would put a computer in the home of people with chronic needs, where we'd be able to be in daily contact with them through a Skype-type service. And then in the meantime, the clinics have also taken, like the Big Valley, there's a Mountain Valley Health Clinic there, also has licensed clinical social worker and telepsych, and they are seeing the mild to moderate, the folks with mild to moderate mental illness, and we're taking on the moderate to severe. So it's kind of divvied up the caseload a little bit. Lillian sent us a list a couple of months ago, maybe last month, no, I think it was in February, about people she had some concerns about, and we did some evaluation on them, and they have, for us to be able to treat them, they have to meet medical necessity, and a lot of these people did not, which doesn't mean that they could not get services. They can certainly talk to our case manager when they're out there, they can go over to the clinic and see the social worker over there, but it's not something we can provide therapy for and get reimbursed for, which we don't have enough staff to even treat all the people here in the Susanville area, so we need to be careful about where we allocate our resources. So that's why we don't have full-time staff in the one-stops anymore.
Thank you.
I have one more question for Lily. Talking about her on here with the food pantry, I know you guys have a food pantry, I've been by a couple times, and it's very busy. I mean, do you have a number on how many families you serve in your?
For the USDA commodities, it's about 120. And then our Food Link, which is a produce giveaway, will start this month, and it runs through October. And we have about 250 come through there. We always have the seniors have priority, and then we honestly, I've been told by Bill Noonberg, who runs USDA commodities, that we're not allowed to actually ask for any evidence of income. So it's one of those things where you have to, hope that the person's telling the truth. We do put out the income requirements, and that's all we can do.
Kind of wrong system then.
Yeah, there are a lot of systems that are frustrating that we try to help families get through. So, and our seniors, we've lost a lot of services, in our area because of cutbacks. There's no legal services anymore that come up. Senior legal doesn't come anymore, and things like that. So those services, people come to us to get help instead of being able to go to someone else.
Okay, any more questions for them? If not, what you need to do again is send a letter to the budget committee requesting what you would like to have.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Rich. Richard, do we have a clear direction on this $650,000 is? Of course, I want it all to go to her long. But I know that's not fair or right. But they need some help. And if this money's already in that pot, I think we need to address this. It's been going on since I've been on this board.